Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to NMBF Coffee Chats. This is a weekly program that we do where we come together as Christians to discuss subjects, topics that are not usually, something we think about or talk about. And we want to really praise God for providing our speaker, Dr. Jamila, this evening to share on this topic of healthy Christian parenting. And it's truly a subject that has been so much important for many parents. And as Brother Prabhu had pointed out, that so many times parents expect the impossible, expect the children to jumpstart themselves when it comes to the critical years like 10th standard, 12th standard, but they are not able to work with them, alongside in their formation years. So, thank you, Brother Prabhu, for this burden that you had that has got us to this program. Yeah. So, just for those of us who are new, we've had once. Yeah, Dr. Jamila is a psychiatrist by practice. She is graduated from the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and completed her postgraduate studies in psychological medicine from the University of Bombay. She has served in the Indian Army. Dr. Jamila has contributed to many books and journals, and she's one of the leading voices on many subjects and topics in the Christian dome, at least here in India as we know it. And so, welcome, Dr. Jamila. Over to you on this part two of healthy Christian parenting.
Thank you so much, Abhijit, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be here again. And yeah, we had a good discussion last time. We had a good session where we looked at the first part where we were considering how to bring up our kids to have a good identity and a good self concept, a good self image in Christ, based on their Christian values. And I hope that was a good place to start. And the whole presentation of a child's being, their whole understanding of themselves should be based on Christ, should be very positive, and should be very full of all sorts of positive statements about themselves because of who they are in Christ. That was the idea. And we talked about also, some ways that parents can contribute to doing this, how in various spheres of life they have lesser or more control. So for instance, in the family they have a lot of control. In school they don't have a lot of control, but they can help the child to process what is happening and things like that. So the parents' role, we said, was very, very important in a child's developing a healthy self-esteem, a healthy identity, a healthy self-image, right? So today we're going to look at how do we help our children to navigate through the whole process of emotional growth and also cognitive growth. Okay, so how do we help our children to become emotionally mature and mature in their thinking and understanding, to remove all the jargon psychological words? All right. So let me share my screen here, and I will. Yeah, screen's visible.
Yeah, it's just coming. Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay. Right. So I wanted to start with this with this verse, because as Prabhu said, and as I suppose all of us know, very often there is an element of anxiety in us about our parenting, and we feel quite stressed sometimes that, am I making a mistake? Am I doing enough? Am I a good parent? Maybe I shouldn't have become a parent, or all these kind of doubts, self doubts, and this feeling of being inadequate is very much present in all of us. And it would be surprising if any of us listening here have always felt adequate as parents. I know I have not. I know I have often felt very inadequate and very much an imposter, really. Okay. But then this verse gives us comfort, and it helps us to know that as Christians, as we trust God and as we walk with God, God promises that He will teach our children. He will, He will be with them. He will be the one who's guiding them, and they will have peace. And peace is ultimately what we want for ourselves, for the world, for our children, isn't it? Shalom, that sense of flourishing, the sense of doing well, being fruitful, growing, being used at your full potential. And that is what we will wish for our children. And this is God's promise to us that He will teach our children. So let's start with that and keep that in mind, even as we look at various other psychological issues and all that, which of course will add to our understanding of this. Okay, so today we're going to look, I said, at emotional development and how parents can help their children to grow emotionally. And this is actually very important because at every stage, if you remember, I looked at Erickson's stages last time, and I told you that this is a kind of stepwise increase in the child's development. Okay, so each stage builds on the other and helps the person to become a psychologically more and more mature and well-rounded person. So it starts with trust, moves on to autonomy, child learns, then initiative, then in school age they learn industry, and then at the age where we are talking about, they learn industry and identity. These two, the fourth and the fifth stages, is where we are concentrating in these sessions. And then, of course, in the 20s, 40s, and then later on in the 60s and 70s, it goes on to learning intimacy, being generative, productive, and finally looking back on your life with a sense of integrity, with a sense of satisfaction. So Erickson's stages are about events and the main task of the age. At each stage, though, there is an emotional development which is happening. Okay, for instance, trust, a feeling of trust is sort of like an emotion, isn't it? Shame and doubt, which is mentioned in the second stage, it's a feeling. You feel ashamed. Similarly, guilt is a feeling, right? There's a cognitive element to it, of course, but it's also a feeling that you have. Similarly, at every stage there is an emotional growth and an emotional consequence if that growth doesn't take place. Okay, so we need to understand that helping our children to navigate through this and helping them to emotional maturity is an important part of our growth. And this is often not something we talk about in so many words. We often focus on studies, on development of the child as you know, developing hobbies or developing other skills, but very rarely do we actually talk about helping the child to become emotionally mature. So we need to understand this. Okay, I've given this in a little bit of detail, but actually we don't need to look at it in such detail. Just to remind us that the child learns emotions very early, all right? Um, Even when the child is born, the child would have some emotions, maybe a sense of uh, joy, a sense of maybe discomfort or fear sometimes. Okay, so there are some very primal emotions. But around the age of 1 to 2 months, the child learns to first smile, right? And all of us parents would remember that first smile which the little baby gives to the caregiver. Right? I can remember that very clearly when the child first recognizes you as an individual and an individual who is responding and caring for the child. So the child looks into your eyes and actually smiles. It's a very amazing emotional development in the child, and it obviously arouses a very similar feeling of intimacy and a fierce feeling of protection and a fierce feeling of love in the parent. Similarly, the child learns to recognize the caregiver by sight. By 8 months to 1 year, other emotions come in. So you have stranger anxiety, you have separation anxiety. Okay, you have the child laughing and sharing experiences with the parents. So these are all emotional developments. Then the child learns that I don't need to be scared when my mom or dad goes away because they will come back. They learn the idea of object permanence. So there's an emotional response there in the sense that they learn not to be emotionally upset when the parent moves away because they know that the parent will come back. Similarly, by the time they reach 2 years old, they are responding to other uh, adults, other children. Okay,
Then they learn slowly by the time of 5 or 6 years, they learn how to apologize. They learn how to give praise. They learn how to play with other children, share, to cooperate. All these are, there is a socio-emotional growth going on. Now, 7 to 8 years, they start to understand rules. And here, this is where the whole friend thing happens. Children at this age, they start having close friends. They have a best friend. Now, the best friend may last for only 1 week, and the next week may have another best friend. That's different. But this sort of thing happens. They learn to understand what is good and bad. So there is a moral, emotional element also which comes in. Then by the time the child is 8, 10 years, the child is becoming more and more independent, and friend groups become important. So there's a lot of complexity as a child moves into early adolescence at 10 years in the friend group, all right? So a lot of emotions are attached to that. So the relationships can be quite complex. She said like this, he said like this, somebody left me out, the child is feeling upset. So there can be a lot of interactions and dynamics in children's social groups, where there's a lot of there's an emotional component to it. So there can be disagreements, there can be breakups. Okay, my friend is not talking to me, or we've all heard this from our children, isn't it? Somebody had a fight with me, somebody said something to me, somebody complained about me to my teacher. So all this kind of thing happens. Also, there is the need to impress and be accepted by the peer group, okay, by the social group. So this kind of pressure, emotional pressure, also happens, and it can lead to children taking all sorts of risks and all sorts of risky behaviors in order to be accepted by the friend. Now, by middle to late adolescence, success in the work sphere, I mean, getting good marks, doing well at sports, doing all these things also has an emotional component. And very much so here now, the peer group acceptance is very important as a child becomes less, spending less time with the parents and more time with these other groups. So this is how the emotional development plays out. Okay, now what is this whole thing about emotional maturity? How do you develop this emotional intelligence? So there's 4 parts to it. The first part is learning how to recognize emotions. Okay, now this is actually something which we think would be very obvious, but actually it's not. Very often, people don't always know what they're feeling. For instance, I would just request all of you to just still yourself for a second and just think about what emotion you're experiencing right now. What are you feeling? Did you have a hard day? Are you tired? Are you a little worried about something? Is there a sense of anticipation? Are you, scared about something? Is there something nagging at your mind? Some fear, some anxiety you can't quite still. There are so many of these things. Sometimes we can't always pin it down. We may just have a sense of discomfort. There are many people who don't know what they're feeling at all. They cannot identify that I'm actually feeling jealous or I'm feeling frustrated. Or, very obvious emotions can be identified, but the lesser emotions and the more subtle emotions are often missed. So learning how to recognize emotions is actually very important, and we'll come to that. Now, once you recognize your emotion, you also have to process it. So you have to understand why, if at all there is a reason why. Sometimes there is no reason that you can pin down. It may be a hormonal reason. It may be just a biological reason. Okay, sometimes there may be no cause, but often there is a trigger, there is a cause for it. And processing this and understanding why I'm feeling this way is the whole point of emotion. Okay, emotion is like a warning signal. It's a flag to you. If you're feeling uncomfortable every time you walk into the house, then you need to know that there's something in the house which is disturbing me. If you're feeling uncomfortable every time you reach your office, you need to know that you're not happy there, that there's something there which is bothering you. And you better find out what it is. Your emotion is a guide to you. Okay, it's a warning signal, it's a flag. And we need to teach our children how to recognize these flags and to process them. Having processed them, the next stage is to express it. How do we express our emotion, right? We can express our emotions in different ways. There are good ways and there are bad ways of expressing emotion, right? Now, if you're sad, for instance, we can just be quiet. We can sit in a corner. We can shut the door, right? And keep away from anybody. We may cry. We may really cry. Okay. We may burst into a hysterical kind of crying. Okay. We may get so sad and angry that we want to kill ourselves. So there's a range of emotions, range of way of showing our emotions, right? Showing this particular emotion. Some people may take the sadness and write a song with it. Some people may take the sadness and take it to God and pray about it. Right? So there are different ways of handling one emotion, and some ways are good and some ways are bad. And uh, this is where the spiritual element will come in as well. How do we handle anger? How do we handle jealousy? How do we? What is an acceptable way to show frustration? Right? How do we show our non-acceptance or disgust at something? So we need to be able to teach our children what are the good and bad ways of expressing different emotions. The last part of emotional intelligence is how to respond correctly to others' emotions. Okay. So you have to first recognize the emotion in others and then learn how to respond accurately and well to somebody else's emotion. So, for instance, if someone has come in and they're really tired and they're upset, at that point, would it be appropriate to pull their leg to make them feel better? Some people feel that that is what should be done. Generally, it doesn't help, right? But we need to learn this, that if someone is tired and cranky, pulling their leg about it is not the best way to handle it, right? A better way may be to give them some space or to give them a cup of tea or whatever. You find some way to handle things like that. When you do that, your relationships get better. And these are social skills which children need to be taught. This is how you respond when someone is behaving in a certain way. Not so much by physical words, okay, teach them more in action, and then sometimes also by a prompt or a suggestion that why don't you do this or something like that. Now, some children, particularly those on the autistic spectrum, will need extra help in recognizing emotions in others and learning how to respond accurately. So parents of children like this will need to really take a little extra effort, teach them. Okay. So, having said this, let's look at what the parents should do. Okay? How do parents deal with this? How do parents help children to develop emotional intelligence? How do they help children to navigate through all these different stages that I talked about? Remember, all these stages when they are struggling with separation anxiety, if they are, anxious about a friend, or if they are worried about different kind of fears. 3 to 4 years, children are scared of many things. They're scared of the dark. They're scared of monsters. They're scared of someone going away. They're scared of so many things. I remember our daughter was very scared at one point of any picture where there was no face. Okay, if the face was hidden, whether it's a real life thing or a picture in a book, that would terrify her. Right. So she didn't. We would have to actually turn the page in the Bible to not show her one particular picture when she was very small, because that picture would frighten her like anything. So children have many fears. How do we respond to those fears? How do we help the child to navigate? Now, the important thing to remember is we need to provide a very soothing response to the child's emotions. We shouldn't say, oh, boys don't cry, or we shouldn't say, why are you so scared all the time? Now, these are not helpful responses by a parent, right? A parent should give a very soothing and a consistent response that it's all right, you'll be fine. Let's figure out what to do to help you. That sort of thing, a very soothing response. Help the child to calm down by not criticizing or blaming, but by calming the child down and just being there for the child. Okay. Now, when you do that, it results in a very close attachment of the child to you. This is how the child learns to trust you. No matter what my emotion is, my parent is going to accept me as I am. That feeling if the child has, it provides a lot of security for the child. And we talked about security and self-esteem last time, right? And we said how parents are very important for that. And this is one way that parents develop that security and self-esteem in the child. I know that I am valued. I know that God values me, and I also know my parents value. Okay, so it helps us to gain that kind of self-esteem. It helps them to self-regulate, because you are not blaming them for it, but you are helping them to learn how to handle their emotion. Paradoxically, it encourages the child. He's secure, but because he's secure, he is able to explore and be independent. Okay. Now, as I said, we do this, but then we also want to acknowledge the child's emotion and help them to understand and recognize it. So call the emotion by name and talk about it. And this is a color, a colored picture which is showing you different emotions, right? And this is going to help you to understand, the range of emotions that we have. These are just some of the emotions, but it also gives various uh, uh, intensity of the emotion. All right. So if you look at fear, for instance, there is apprehension, that's a milder fear, and then fear, and then they've said terror, right? So this is just very simply explaining that it has degrees of fear, right? If you look at surprise, sometimes you can be distracted, so you're just a little, your attention is drawn away from what you were doing because of your surprise. Then it goes up till amazement. So you're really surprised at what has happened. Your eyes will, dilate, your pupils will dilate, your mouth will show the effect of the amazement that you're feeling. This here is sadness. It starts with just feeling pensive, a little reflective, a little quiet, maybe a little worried about, a feeling of just withdrawing a little bit, feeling a little pensive. And the last stage here would be grief, where you are upset, you're really weeping over some loss. If you look at disgust, it would start with boredom. Boredom is where you're not really interested, you are kind of put off by something, and it goes all the way to loathing, where you really, really dislike something. Anger, it can go from annoyance to rage. Anticipation goes from interest to vigilance, and joy from serenity to ecstasy, right? And trust here, I've already said, okay, acceptance till, what is this? Admiration. So we help the child to understand their emotion and the intensity of their emotion by acknowledging the emotion, calling it what it is, and helping them to identify it in themselves and others, and reminding them that there's nothing wrong with feeling emotion. Emotion is fine. Emotion is normal. We are created with moods. God himself has emotion, right? Jesus was sad. Jesus wept. God was grieved, right? The Holy Spirit is grieved, and God sometimes we express it as God's wrath, right? God's anger at sin. So there are different emotions which God himself has. Emotions are not bad, but we need to identify them and express them correctly. Now, I've been talking enough, so I want you all to put in your chat groups, put in the chat, if you can identify these emotions. What are these emotions which people are feeling? What about this? What's going on here with this kid? Can I see any responses in the chat?
Yeah. The kid in the red t-shirt, what do you think he's going through? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Frustration.
Frustration.
Okay. He's sitting, he's looking a little dejected, I think. Right? That might be the word, right? He's perhaps feeling a little left out. He's sitting alone. He's a little dejected. His head is sunk in his arms. All right. What about this child? Disappointed, abandoned. Yeah. All right. Good. Sad. Yeah. What about this one? The second one.
Yeah. From left to right, right? The one leaning against the wall.
The boy leaning against the wall.
Tired.
Tired. Okay. Tired. Disinterested. Lost. All right. Lost. Okay. What about this girl?
Next to him. Yeah. The girl looking fed up.
Fed up.
Okay. The boy is dejected. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
The girl also is looking down. Okay. Her face is
ashamed.
Sad. She's ashamed or sad or something like that. Okay. One of those very negative emotions. What about this child here?
With tears.
That one's easy. Huh?
Yeah. Low self-esteem is the earlier picture.
Low self-esteem. This lady. All right. What about this child here in the corner with the pink headdress? Helpless. Okay, that was the girl. Okay.
Crying
the child is crying for something. So the child is either sad or angry, right? About something, possibly sad. All right. So the child is upset about something. Child is stressed and crying. What about this picture? The girl and presumably her mom. What's she doing? What expression is she showing?
Disinterested, annoyed.
Annoyed. She's rolling her eyes. Literally, she's rolled her eyes up. Okay. Okay. So pissed off. Yes. All right. So this one has rolled her eyes upwards. So that is a way of showing that she is not very happy with whatever the mom is saying. What about this child?
Clinging to the leg.
Don't leave me. Exactly. This is a separation anxiety, right? Don't leave me. Please, you're hanging on to the dad's leg, dad, mom, whatever. This child in the black hood. Persuading the child not to rage. Yes, correct. That child is actually quite angry, right? Shooting daggers from the child's eyes, right? What about this girl?
Rebellious. Both of them are rebellious.
Both of them, wait, I will see you, rebellious, both of them, always scolding me. All right. So this is where both of them are showing with their eyes that they're not happy, and their eyes are very fierce and very hostile. No? What about this child here?
On the sofa. Upset about something.
Okay, upset about something. Watch her body language. Okay, she is quite clearly upset about something. What about this girl with the computer? Frustrated. Yes, that's a typical picture of frustration, right? So something on the laptop is making her tear her hair out. And this boy at the bottom?
Boy at the bottom, defensive,
disinterested. Yeah, defensive, disinterested, one of the two. And also his face is totally like he's trying not to show any emotion, right?
Lost.
So he could be either actually disinterested, or he is bored and getting angry and disgusted sort of at what is being told, or some form of that. Okay, so you can see here that it's not like, see the children's emotions, this one and this one and probably this one were much clearer, no? When the small children are doing it, they are very expressive in their emotions because they have no controls. The older children, you can see the pictures are already more subtle, right? So this girl is just rolling her eyes upward, nothing more. It's a much more subtle sign of anger. Of course, teenagers may also scream and shout and yeah. So he's in his own world, he's waiting to get done with the lecture. Yes, correct. So so the thing is, teenagers may also scream and shout and show very extreme emotions, but often they have also learned some amount of self-control. So their emotions may be shown more just with the eyes or just with the face, and the whole body may not be involved. Okay. So whatever it is, this is something that we need to teach our child to recognize emotions in themselves and others by talking about it. Okay, you seem very angry today. I could say that, when you're watching something on television or something with your child, just point out these things so that the child learns to understand. Okay, and you can just show the clip here, Abhijit.
Yeah, sure.
5 basic emotions are shown very clearly in this picture, in this movie, which you can show your children if they are, very up to 10. I guess they would be fine with seeing this.
Right.
Maybe even older.
Okay, those watching online, we are stopping the live stream now, but you can we'll be just watching a few minutes.
Come back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, best scenes inside out, and then we can you can join us for the next part.